They fined me $10,000 for unsanctioned survival. That was the exact phrase on the notice, typed in all caps, stamped 3:42 p.m., 11 days after the hurricane hit. According to the HOA, my house disrupted visual continuity by remaining intact while the rest of Harbor Creek drowned. Welcome to HOA Rebels. I'm Alex Wren, licensed civil engineer, father of one, and apparently the guy who committed the crime of building something that worked. I live in Clearwater Bay, Florida. If you're over 50 or just appreciate seeing a bully lose in paperwork, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I'll read every state. That storm, Hurricane Isla, had ripped through on September 28th. Winds at 132 mph, waterline reaching 6 feet on our street. I'd poured half my savings into elevating the foundation and installing hurricane glass rated to 150 mph. My late wife Megan used to say, if you design for the storm, you don't fear the rain. She'd died 3 years earlier, and every nail in that house was my promise to her. Protect our boy, Leo. When I walked outside after the flood, roofs were shredded, cars upended, mailboxes twisted like tin straws. My lawn was green, almost glowing against the gray wreckage. By day 5, the HOA president, Marlene Tate, pulled up in her white Lexus and stared over the fence like she'd spotted a crime scene. "This looks insensitive," she said, stepping onto my dry walkway. "Everyone's suffering, and your property screams exception." I told her calmly that my property also screamed code compliance. I had permits for every beam and screw. She handed me the first notice of visual nonconformity, $500 per day until I restored community uniformity. That was their phrase. I laughed until the fines hit 10 grand. The next week, insurance adjusters, FEMA assessors, and 3 reporters came. The HOA barricaded my street, citing safety. Neighbors whispered that I must have bribed inspectors or diverted stormwater. Someone spray-painted cheater on my mailbox. I started documenting everything. Timestamps, photos, voice memos. Old habit from my job reviewing infrastructure bids for Hillsborough County. Paper trails tell the truth when people won't. By the 3rd week, the HOA scheduled a special compliance hearing in the community hall. October 17th, 6 p.m. sharp. They hinted at a lawsuit if I didn't pay. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Leo asleep upstairs, flipping through the binder of deeds and permits Megan and I had assembled years before. One tab caught my eye. Drainage easements. Recorded 2008. The map showed something strange. A 12-foot stormwater easement running directly under my lot, terminating behind the HOA's clubhouse retention pond. I remembered the trench they'd filled in back when the developer sold the HOA the parcel. A slow idea formed, the kind that hums behind your ribs. If that easement still existed on record, and if the HOA had built over it without a proper release, they might be sitting on a legal fault line bigger than any hurricane. I called my old friend Dennis Kwan, a real estate attorney with ink-stained cuffs and a habit of scribbling statutes on napkins. He answered before the second ring. "You sound like a man holding a landmine," he said. "Maybe," I told him, "but I'm not sure which side's standing on it." He chuckled low. "Send me the plat, Alex. Tonight." I scanned and emailed it. 10 minutes later, he texted, "This could be your leverage. Don't breathe a word until I confirm with the recorder's office." Outside, the streetlights flickered against the wreckage. Water still lapped in driveways. I could almost hear Megan's voice, calm, practical, telling me to think, not rage. So I did. The next morning, I logged every call, every notice. The HOA had crossed from governance into harassment. They even sent a mandatory landscape remediation order. Replace my intact grass with approved recovery turf. That's when Leo, who's 10, looked up from his cereal and said, "Dad, are they mad because we're okay?" I didn't have the heart to answer. By Friday, Dennis confirmed the easement still existed, unextinguished, still under county jurisdiction, which meant, technically, the HOA had no authority to regulate any structure sitting atop it, and their clubhouse, pool deck, and half their parking lot were atop it. Knowledge nugget number 1. In Florida, an active drainage easement remains enforceable by the county or grantee unless formally vacated through recorded resolution. Unauthorized construction over it can void local occupancy permits. I printed the statute, tucked it behind my violation notices, and decided not to mention it. Not yet. Instead, I let them keep coming. Each letter, each petty fine was another drop filling a legal reservoir I planned to unleash when the timing was perfect. The night before the hearing, I stood in my yard under that intact red roof, wind humming through broken palm fronds around me. The neighborhood was still half dark, half hopeful. I promised myself that when this was over, I wouldn't just win. I'd fix the system that let them bully people when they should have been rebuilding together. The trick was patience, and a little quiet revenge by the book. When I walked into that hearing on October 17th, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. A folding table at the front held 3 board members and Marlene Tate at the center, her pearls immaculate, voice polished to courtroom volume. Behind her, the HOA's attorney, a man named Burke with slicked hair and a silver pen, shuffled a stack of violation photos like playing cards. I set my own binder down, label facing forward. Wren Property Records, verified. Marlene started with what she called the summary of community grievance. She read each infraction like scripture. Item 1, visual disparity. Item 2, non-conforming landscaping. Item 3, floodwater displacement impacting neighboring lots. She ended with the gem. Item 4, social discord resulting from unbalanced recovery. I almost laughed. Social discord? She leaned in. Mr. Wren, the neighborhood must present unity in adversity. Your property's condition, gleaming when others suffer, breeds resentment. I can repaint my house gray if it helps their feelings, I said, but I don't pay $10 million for surviving. Burke's smile was a clean razor. You signed the covenant, sir. The board can levy extraordinary assessments for community harm. Dennis, seated behind me, whispered, They're bluffing. Extraordinary assessments require a supermajority vote of the membership. Knowledge nugget number 2. Under Florida Statute 72-308, special assessments above routine maintenance require approval from at least 75% of the total voting interests, recorded by roll call. Board-only votes don't cut it. Marlene didn't blink. We're convening an emergency executive session next week to finalize. I kept my voice calm. And you'll file the vote count with the county, right? Her pause lasted half a heartbeat too long. The audience noticed. That was my first taste of power. Not the kind that yells, but the kind that asks a precise question in public record. As the meeting adjourned, a man from the back muttered, Wish my place had survived like his. I caught his eye, a retired electrician named Harold, I later learned. That brief look became an alliance. Outside, the air smelled of wet asphalt and cheap coffee. Dennis told me, They're betting you'll break before they do. I won't, I said, but I want them to think I might. For the next 2 weeks, I kept quiet. Let them overplay. They posted my infractions on the HOA bulletin board, then mailed an intent to lien notice for $10,000. Same number as the fines. It arrived November 3rd, postmarked 8:12 a.m. Leo saw it before I did. Dad, why do they hate our house? He asked. Because it's still standing, I told him. Second engagement moment came naturally when I looked into the camera that night to update the channel. If you've ever dealt with an HOA like this, I said, tell me your story. How far did they go to control your property? Share what worked for you. Somebody watching this might need that tip tonight. And if you've got HOA folks lurking in the comments, leave your message for them right here. Let's make this thread a record they can't delete. By mid-November, I started the dig. I filed a public records request for Harbor Creek's corporate filings, insurance certificates, and bond statements. It cost $27.75 in copying fees and took 5 days. When the envelope arrived, I read it under the kitchen light like a detective with a clue board. The HOA had let their general liability insurance lapse for 21 days during 2019. The renewal binder clearly stated, coverage void during non-payment periods 6/1/19 to 6/22/19. That meant any structure built or modified during that window wasn't technically under insured supervision, meaning the clubhouse and pool built that summer might violate mortgage terms for the community loan. I called Dennis again. He whistled. You're sitting on a double breach. Easement, encroachment, and insurance gap. They'll fold if you time it right. Not yet, I said. Let them think I'm cornered. Meanwhile, Marlene doubled the citations. New ones every Tuesday. Mailbox angle, unapproved tree trimming, improper lighting hue. My yard lights were warm white. Hers, coincidentally, icy blue. I logged each notice in a spreadsheet labeled Harassment Index, complete with timestamps and tracking numbers. I also installed cameras, fully disclosed, one-party consent under Florida law. Not for spying, for documentation. One night, a security patrol hired by the HOA parked outside my driveway for 40 minutes. Another night, someone loosened the screws on my back gate latch. I tightened them with a torque wrench and kept the screws as evidence. The fear came quietly, like humidity before a storm. I'd lie awake listening to the generator hum, thinking about Leo upstairs, the way he'd tuck his flashlight under his pillow just in case the power failed again. Harold stopped by one afternoon carrying coffee in a dented thermos. They went after me too, he said. Called my generator a noise violation. They just hate being shown up. You keep your paperwork? He nodded, tapping his temple. Copies and witnesses. Always 2 witnesses. We laughed, but underneath it, both of us knew it wasn't funny. As Thanksgiving approached, Marlene announced a new reconstruction fund with a mandatory $2,500 contribution from each homeowner. They called it solidarity. I called it extortion with stationery. That night, I stood on my porch with a flashlight and reread the drainage easement clause under the county seal. The words were dry, bureaucratic, and beautiful. Access reserved for maintenance and inspection by designated grantee or assignee. Grantee, that was the county, but the county could assign it to anyone. I stared at that sentence for a long time, hearing rain begin to patter on the roof. Somewhere in that sound was a plan forming, one that would turn every ounce of their arrogance into my authority. The county clerk's office smelled like dust and toner, the kind of smell that settles in your lungs and makes everything feel official. I was there on December 2nd, just after sunrise, holding a coffee that had gone cold on the drive. The woman behind the counter had a badge reading M. Dorsey. She looked at the plat map I'd printed and said, "Oh, this old one. Haven't seen that easement file in years. Still active?" I asked. She typed something into her terminal, the keys clicking like raindrops on metal. "Yes, sir. Active and assignable." That word echoed again. Assignable. For $23 in filing fees, I filled out a request to be named maintenance contractor of record under that same easement, through my small LLC, Wren Civil Consulting, which technically still existed. I'd used it years ago for site inspections. The clerk processed it without hesitation. I walked out holding a stamped assignment letter with today's date and her initials, MD32. Outside, the humidity was thick as syrup, but I felt lighter. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was a registered maintenance grantee with lawful access rights to the very ground under their clubhouse. That was the beginning of my quiet countdown. Back at home, I sealed the stamped letter in a fireproof envelope and placed it in my lockbox. Then I printed a duplicate for Dennis. When he saw it, he actually laughed. First time I'd heard that in months. "You realize what this means?" he said. "Yeah, I own their problem now." He leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Keep your powder dry, Alex. Let them dig deeper." And dig they did. The HOA started sending maintenance crews onto my lot without notice. Inspection visits, they called them. Each time I photographed the trucks, license plates visible, and sent certified letters demanding notice under Florida Statute 720.305. The letters stacked like bricks on my desk. Knowledge nugget number 3. Florida homeowners can recover attorney's fees for proven selective enforcement or retaliatory actions by an HOA. Documentation is the weapon. Emotion is the trap. Around mid-December, Harold and 2 other neighbors, Mrs. Calloway and a young teacher named Reese, joined me for coffee on my porch. We sat surrounded by ruin that still hadn't been cleaned up, roof tiles in puddles, broken fences, mailboxes leaning like drunk soldiers. Rena said, "They fined me $250 for using temporary plywood shutters, called them aesthetic violations." Mrs. Calloway shook her head. My husband's oxygen machine runs off an extension cord since the power's still unstable. They cited us for visible wiring. I told them, if we stay separate, they pick us off one by one. If we act together, they drown. That got quiet nods all around. Late that night, I filmed a segment for the channel. This isn't about my house anymore. It's about everyone they've silenced with paperwork. I've found something under their clubhouse that's going to change the balance, but I can't use it yet. Timing matters. Until then, tell me, how far should an HOA control your porch, your lawn, your life? Where's the line? Comment your limit below. The debate took off. People arguing about property rights versus community standards. Ex-HOA board members confessing regret. Lawyers quoting statutes. Every comment was oxygen. By Christmas week, the HOA had mailed another final demand. This one included an exact sum, $10,012.50, accounting for administrative surcharges. It was stapled to a threat of foreclosure if unpaid by January 15th. I taped that notice to my refrigerator door where I could see it every morning. Fear is smaller when you stare it down daily. On New Year's Eve, Dennis called with news. County inspectors doing the annual drainage review January 10th. Guess what area's on the list? Their clubhouse? Bingo! The easement's due for inspection. And guess who can legally accompany them now? That was my moment to breathe again. The universe, or bureaucracy, same thing, had just drawn a line straight through my enemy's house. Harold dropped by that evening with a bottle of cheap champagne. When this ends, he said, I hope you make them apologize in writing. I won't need an apology, I said, looking out over the wrecked street as fireworks cracked faintly in the distance. I'll take reform instead. Still, inside I felt the drumbeat of nerves. I had leverage, yes, but leverage is worthless without timing. And the HOA wasn't done testing me. The first week of January, they filed a code complaint against my property for improper drainage modifications. The city inspector arrived, embarrassed, carrying a clipboard. Honestly, Mr. Wren, this is a waste of time, he said, taking photos. Your system's textbook perfect. He closed his folder and I caught him muttering, never seen a community eat its own like this. That night I updated the log, numbering every false claim. 32 so far. The harassment index was starting to look like an engineering project. When I set the pen down, my hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, from the weight of restraint. The urge to walk into that clubhouse and throw the easement file on the table was almost unbearable. But I waited. On January 9th, I printed the inspection appointment letter and clipped it to my binder. Leo asked, "Is it tomorrow?" "Yeah," I said. "Tomorrow we see who actually owns the ground they're standing on." He smiled in that small, brave way Megan used to. Mom would say you built the storm shelter. Now it's time to open the door. He was right. The next morning would start the fall. January 10th broke with a slate-gray sky and that heavy coastal air that tastes faintly of salt and metal. I met the county inspector, a quiet man named Alvarez, at the front gate of Harbor Creek at 9 o'clock a.m. sharp. He wore steel-toed boots and carried a yellow field tablet covered in raindrops. When Marlene saw him approaching with me at his side, she nearly tripped over the curb. "Mr. Wren," she snapped, "this is private property." Alvarez flipped open his credentials with the bored precision of a man who's heard that line 100 times. County Drainage Division. Scheduled inspection per active easement 2008 B17. Mr. Wren is the registered maintenance contractor of record. He's authorized to accompany me. Her mouth actually opened twice before sound came out. That can't be right. He gestured toward the retention pond. "Ma'am, please unlock the gate." The metallic clack of her key hitting the padlock felt like a verdict. Inside the fence, the smell of algae and diesel mixed under the morning drizzle. Alvarez walked the perimeter, snapping photos. "You see this?" he said to me quietly. "They filled part of the drainage trench with gravel, poured concrete over it for that patio." "That's the one I told you about," I said. "Built during their insurance lapse." He nodded, logging the coordinates. "If this encroachment's confirmed, they'll have to remediate. Could cost 6 figures. I didn't smile. I just looked up at Marlene standing stiff by the fence, her white shoes sinking slightly into the mud. As we left, she hissed, "You think you've won, but you're destroying this community." I paused at the gate. "No, Marlene, I'm protecting it from you." That afternoon, the HOA issued a community alert email accusing me of harassment and unauthorized entry. I replied once with the inspection report number and county seal attached. Then I let silence do the talking. The days that followed were strangely calm, the kind of silence before systems break. Harold said it best. They're rewiring the fuse box while standing in water. Dennis advised patience. Let the county file its notice first. That's your cue. I waited. January 18th, 3:12 p.m. The notice arrived. Drainage easement violation. Unpermitted construction within restricted zone. Compliance order pending. The letter went to both me and the HOA reversa. Alarm number 1 was complete. The ground beneath their power had just shifted. I made copies, sealed them, and placed one in my evidence box. Then I sat on the porch with Leo, who was building a model house from spare wood. "Why are you so calm?" he asked. "Because they don't know the storm already passed," I said. That night I drafted a quiet email to the HOA board. Pursuant to my maintenance rights, I request a special open meeting to discuss remediation and safety coordination. Transparency protects us all. Sent. Timestamped. 9:44 p.m. No response. Instead, Marlene doubled down. New flyers went up calling me a litigious saboteur. Someone dumped a bag of grass clippings on my driveway. Small stuff, petty but telling. Late January, Dennis said, "They'll convene in February. Public image pressure's mounting." I grinned. "Good. Then let's make sure the public shows up." On February 2nd, I mailed certified invitations to every homeowner, attaching the county notice and citing open meeting laws. I posted nothing online, not yet, just waited for word to spread. By the week's end, the HOA meeting agenda had ballooned to community emergency session, drainage compliance and financial impact. That's when I recorded a short clip for the channel. They tried to bury the truth under concrete, literally. What's fair? Protecting property value or protecting people? Comment what matters more in your neighborhood. Debate exploded. Architects, lawyers, regular homeowners, all weighing in. Some said beauty keeps value high. Others said safety is the only standard that counts. The engagement kept rolling, and with it, the anticipation. By the morning of February 9th, folding chairs filled the clubhouse hall. A storm rumbled offshore, thunder rolling like distant drums. The air smelled of wet plaster and fear. I set my binder on the podium, feeling every eye. Marlene tried to gavel me out before I began, but a deputy from the county compliance office, he stepped forward, badge visible. "Let him speak. He's the registered contractor of record." I leaned into the mic, rain tapping the windows. This community deserves the truth. The HOA built over a drainage easement still owned by the county. Their negligence risks flooding every rebuilt home on this street. I've notified authorities. Remediation's already in motion. We can fight me, or we can fix this. A murmur spread like wind through dry grass. The deputy placed the official seal on the podium, confirmation for the record. Marlene's face drained of color. Outside, thunder cracked again, right on cue. The deputy's hand lingered on the seal like a stamp of judgment, and the room went still enough to hear the hum of the exit sign. Then came the outburst. Burke, the HOA's attorney, shooting to his feet. "This man manipulated a clerical loophole. You exploited an old filing." I met his eyes, steady. "No, I read your own bylaws. Section 8.2, all construction must remain compliant with existing easements and local regulations. You ignored that for 4 years. Dennis, sitting 2 rows back, folded his arms. He didn't need to say a word. The facts were already bleeding through the room like ink through thin paper. Burke tried again, voice raised. "Even if the easement exists, you have no authority to—" The deputy interrupted, tone dry as concrete. "County recognizes the assignment. He's on record. This isn't a debate. It's compliance." Marlene gripped the podium as if she could hold power by force. "You're tearing down everything we built." I leaned closer. "You built it on someone else's land." That broke them. A few homeowners stood whispering, snapping photos on their phones. The storm outside punctuated every silence with thunder. By the time the meeting adjourned, half the board had already slipped out the back door. Burke left his silver pen on the table. "Forgotten. That night, I drove home in sheets of rain so thick the wipers couldn't keep up. Leo was waiting at the window when I pulled in. He hugged me hard, wordless. Upstairs, he'd taped one of my old engineering blueprints above his desk, a drawing of our house foundation. Underneath, he'd written, "Safe equals smart." The following week, retaliation arrived in a flurry, digital this time. Anonymous posts in the neighborhood group calling me a mole, a sellout, a narcissist with a YouTube channel. Someone even created a fake account pretending to be me, promising cash rewards for HOA resignations. It was sloppily done but dangerous enough to sting. I reported, documented, printed screenshots with timestamps, all of it. Evidence folders were now at version 3.7, each tab numbered and cross-indexed. Fear crept in again. What if someone decided to teach me a lesson in person? I added motion lights along the driveway and notified the sheriff's office of harassment, careful not to overplay it. A week later, I found nails scattered across my driveway. 23 of them I counted. I swept them up one by one, dropped them in a jar labeled Evidence, Jan 28. Each rattle of metal and glass hardened my resolve. That night, filming another update, I looked straight into the camera. If your HOA ever weaponized fear, I said, remember this: silence is compliance. They can fine your mailbox height, but they can't own your courage. Now tell me, $250, $500, $1,000 fines, justice or just a revenue game? What's your limit? Drop it below. The comments came like rain. War stories, advice, sympathy, rage. One veteran in Arizona wrote, "They towed my wife's car for a faded plate sticker. I never paid them another dime." Another said, "Record everything. Sunshine laws are your best weapon." I felt less alone. In early February, the county's remediation order landed like a hammer. Immediate. Suspension of HOA recreational facility use, pending structural evaluation and drainage restoration. The clubhouse, Marlene's pride, was closed indefinitely. Her next move was pure theater. She called an emergency session, invited a local news crew, and tried to paint herself as a victim of bureaucracy. The headline read, "HOA president claims retaliation over storm survivors' vendetta." But the footage told a different story. Her voice trembling, eyes darting as reporters quoted the county letter on camera. That clip hit 300,000 views in 48 hours once it found its way to my channel. I didn't even add commentary. I just posted the public record. By Valentine's Day, 2 board members had resigned. The HOA's insurance carrier sent a notice of potential premium increase, 125% pending compliance verification. The dominoes had started their fall, slow but sure. Meanwhile, Leo and I started repairing our fence, plank by plank. It wasn't just about the yard. It was about reclaiming peace. Harold dropped by with a toolbox and that same dented thermos. "You've got them rattled," he said, handing me a screwdriver. "Next time they try something, it'll be desperation." He was right. Desperation smells a certain way, like hot paper and panic sweat. 3 nights later, I got a letter hand-delivered, no envelope. A single sentence typed in bold: "Stop before you lose more than your house." I read it under the porch light, the bulb buzzing above me. Then I folded it, slid it into the jar with the nails and whispered to the dark, "You already lost your ground." By March, Harbor Creek looked like a battlefield between pride and accountability. The clubhouse doors were chained shut with a county seal sticker, the pool drained halfway down, tiles flaking like sunburned skin. Marlene had stopped waving her Lexus key fob in public. She drove a rental now, a dented, gray sedan that seemed to match her new mood. I didn't gloat. I documented. Every change, every sign of structural work that didn't comply with the remediation order. I photographed it and forwarded it to the compliance portal. Quietly, patiently. Meanwhile, Dennis pushed for the next step. "You've got leverage. Use it before they regroup," he said over coffee at his office, surrounded by stacks of case binders. I nodded. "I want to do it clean. Public, on record." He smirked. "That's your trademark." We filed a formal petition for partial administrative oversight of the drainage project, citing my role as easement assignee and affected homeowner. It was dry legal work, but beneath the jargon was the blade. It forced the HOA to coordinate with me or risk contempt. Reversal number 1 had set the dominoes trembling. Now I needed the strike that would send them toppling. By mid-March, rumors swirled that Marlene planned to replace me via a bylaw amendment, stripping non-board members of maintenance privileges, an amendment that would take a 2/3 homeowner vote to pass. She underestimated how many people had begun reading the actual bylaws because of me. Harold knocked on my door one evening, clipboard in hand. "Got 72 signatures already," he said. "People want a recall election instead." I couldn't help but laugh, quietly, almost in disbelief. They finally realized it's their community. He grinned. "Sometimes you have to break the dam to see the water's been yours all along." That same week, I received a thick envelope from the HOA attorney's office marked "Cease and Desist." Inside, 8 pages accusing me of defamation, interference, and malicious compliance. It demanded I remove my videos within 10 days or face further action. Dennis skimmed it, then placed it flat on his desk. No legal teeth, pure intimidation. Should I ignore it? Respond politely. One line. All statements are factual and supported by public record. That's it. I did exactly that. The next day, a reporter from Channel 7 called. "We're doing a follow-up on the HOA drainage issue. Want to comment?" "Only on the record," I said. We filmed that afternoon in my driveway. I wore a plain shirt, no slogans, no anger. Just truth. This isn't about one homeowner. It's about a system that punishes compliance because it exposes corruption. We built these homes with hope. The HOA built their power on fear. The piece aired 2 nights later. The thumbnail froze on Marlene turning away from the camera as the reporter held up the county notice. The internet did the rest. That was when I started to feel the first tremor of control shift completely. Emails poured in, other HOAs across the state asking for document templates, public records request samples, legal citations. Dennis joked I should start charging consulting fees. But I wasn't in it for profit. My motive was older, carved into my ribs the night I promised Megan I'd protect what we'd built. This was that promise kept. One evening, as the sun bled orange over the cul-de-sac, Leo stood beside me, both of us watching the reflection shimmer on the puddled street. "So, are they going to stop now?" he asked. I exhaled slowly. "They're going to listen. That's enough for tonight." Then I turned on the camera one last time for that week's update. We're at the tipping point. They've threatened, smeared, and stalled, but now they're cornered by their own signatures. So here's the question. When an HOA crosses the line, do you fight with lawyers or with leverage? What would you do? Comments flooded in. Strategists, homeowners, even a few anonymous board members offering apologies. The debate pulsed for days, and for the first time, I saw something close to reform taking shape beyond my zip code. Still, I knew there was one more card to pite kiase. Eport. Lay. The county had scheduled a joint oversight meeting with the HOA, their insurer, and affected residents for April 7th. It was meant to finalize the remediation plan. That would be the set piece. The day everything met daylight. The night before, I opened the old lockbox, pulled out Megan's photo, and set it beside the easement papers. I whispered, "We built it right. Now they'll see why." April 7th began with the sharp click of metal latches and folding chairs, the sound of an ambush disguised as a meeting. The county auditorium smelled like rain-soaked carpet and burnt coffee. Rows of residents filled the seats, murmuring as the HOA board filed in like nervous defendants. The local news vans outside made sure every word would echo beyond Harbor Creek. The moderator, a soft-spoken ombudsman named Carver, adjusted his glasses. Today's hearing concerns the Harbor Creek Drainage Compliance Order and related governance issues. Marlene tried to speak first, as always. "Mr. Carver, this entire matter has been exaggerated by one individual with personal—" He raised a hand. "You'll have your time, Ms. Tate. For now, Mr. Wren, you have the floor." I stood, the microphone cold under my fingers, binder already open to the tab marked Sequence of Violations. I didn't need to dramatize. The facts were the performance. 32 citations, I began, flipping pages one by one. All issued within 98 days to a single property. Of those, 14 were voided by city inspection, 9 contradicted the HOA's own architectural guidelines, and the rest. I held up a photo of their clubhouse foundation, cracked where the concrete sat over the drainage line, are now sitting on an active easement they illegally filled. A low murmur rippled through the audience. I let it linger before adding, "The storm didn't break this neighborhood. The arrogance of this board did." Burke rose with a shaky voice, waving a letter. "Mr. Wren manipulated public filings for profit." "Show me the profit," I said calmly. "Every dollar I've spent is documented. $1,370 in fees, not revenue. What I've gained is peace of mind, which you tried to take from my son." For the first time, the crowd clapped, quietly at first, then louder, until even Carver had to wait them out. Harold leaned toward me from the second row. "Finish it, Alex." So I did. "I'm not asking for punishment, I'm asking for reform. Term limits for this board, open meeting records, and an independent audit of all funds collected since the 2019 insurance lapse. We deserve transparency before trust." Carver nodded. "Your proposals are entered into record." He turned toward Marlene. "Ms. Tate, anything to add?" She hesitated, face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. We acted in good faith." Carver's tone was measured. "Good faith doesn't excuse negligence. The county concurs with Mr. Wren's documentation. The remediation plan will proceed under joint oversight. Failure to comply within 60 days will result in referral to state regulators." Thunderous in its simplicity. Outside, cameras flashed, rain streaking across lenses. The deputy from earlier, same one who'd validated my inspection rights, stood beside the podium now, his uniform damp but steady. "Everything's by the book," he told one reporter. "Homeowners within his rights." That quote made the evening news before I even got home. The HOA's insurer confirmed an internal review. By morning, the story had jumped statewide. Engineer exposes HOA misconduct using their own easement. Leo saw it on TV at breakfast. "Dad, that's you," he said, eyes wide. I smiled, stirring my coffee. "That's all of us." But the dominoes didn't stop there. Within a week, the bank froze the HOA's discretionary account pending audit. Burke resigned, citing health reasons. 2 board members followed. Marlene tried one last move, sending a mass email accusing the county of overreach. The county's public information officer replied with a single sentence, "All documents are publicly accessible under Florida Statute 119. Transparency, sunlight, exactly what they'd feared most." I waited 3 days before replying to that letter. Enough time for headlines to cool, for tempers to settle, for paperwork to catch up with conscience. Then I typed a formal response and slid it across Dennis's desk. "Offer," I said simply. He read the first paragraph, then looked up. "You're serious about giving the easement rights back?" "Conditionally," I said. "They want their ground. They earn it, through reform." He smiled, slow and satisfied. "You always did prefer engineering to revenge." We finalized the agreement in language so clean, even Burke would have admired it. I'd relinquish my maintenance assignment after the HOA enacted 4 binding reforms. Term limits. No board member may serve more than 2 consecutive 3-year terms. Transparency charter. All financial records, votes, and enforcement actions must be public within 10 business days. Independent ethics committee. 3 residents chosen by lottery to review any future citations or disputes. Community Access Fund. A mandatory annual budget allocation, 5% minimum, for resident-led safety and infrastructure projects. Knowledge. Nugget number 4. Florida's consent decree model allows civil settlements between private parties to be filed with the court, giving reforms legal enforceability without protracted litigation. We filed it that Thursday. Carver, the county ombudsman, signed as witness. The clerk stamped it with a deep, satisfying thud. That same evening, the HOA's new interim chair, Harold, still wearing his scuffed work boots, hosted an open forum in the school gym. Folding chairs, coffee urns, a hum of hesitant hope. He read the reforms aloud, one by one, and when he finished, the room actually applauded. Not polite applause, real, relieved applause. Marlene didn't attend. She'd already sold her house and moved inland, rumor said. Burke resurfaced under a new firm name. The HOA's insurer, Quia. absorbed the remediation costs, and Harbor Creek, for the first time in years, started planting trees instead of sending fines. The easement restoration finished by early June. Fresh concrete, regraded trenches, proper drainage flow. Standing there with Alvarez and his crew, I watched water slide cleanly into the channel. No obstruction, no hidden flaw. He slapped the side of the culvert with his glove. "Built right this time," he said. Leo ran ahead, pointing to the new sign by the pond. Community Safety Easement, Protected Access Zone. His handwriting had helped paint it during Volunteer Day. I breathed in the smell of wet soil and cut grass, felt the sun warming the back of my neck. "We did it, kid," I said. He grinned. "Mom would like it." "Yeah," I whispered. "She would." Before sunset, I filmed the final segment for the channel. If you believe I fought the right way and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. And share this, not for clicks, but because someone out there needs to see that lawful persistence beats fear every time. We can fix broken systems. We just have to outlast them. I paused, letting that truth hang in the quiet. We started as one house against a storm. Now, we're a community against silence. After I signed off, I stood by the mailbox, same one that once bore cheater in spray paint, and ran my fingers over its clean white surface. The porch light came on, reflecting off a new brass number plate. Visual beat number 3. I slipped the stamped deed copy into a folder labeled Closed Cases, snapped it shut with a click, and set it on the shelf beside my other binders. Later that night, the local paper ran a small piece beneath the weather report. Harbor Creek HOA implements landmark reforms following resident petition. County officials praise cooperation. I smiled when I saw it. No headlines, no fireworks, just quiet justice. What changed after? A lot. Insurers reviewed policies statewide. 2 other HOAs amended their bylaws to add term limits. Our neighborhood built a playground where the old clubhouse stood, naming it Megan's Field, a vote I didn't even request. And me? I went back to work, one permit at a time, still keeping records, still designing for storms. Because there's always another case, another fight worth doing right. Next case? A condo board in Sarasota that thinks they can fine a veteran for flying his flag. Let's see what the paperwork says.